Wilberforce was always frustrated with the incrementalism that he saw. I mean, he talked about how angry and frustrated he was with, like, he wanted slavery gone, abolished, and rightfully
he
so.
said the incrementalists were the ones who kept it from being abolished for those 20 years that he wrote
Right.
those bills.
That said, he still, in spite of his frustration, he still supported those bills that, there were incremental bills that, like, we're not going to abolish slavery right now, but we are going to, ban, shipping slaves into Europe.
Hold on, just real quick.
People can keep their slaves, but we're going to ban shipping them into Europe. Okay,
you think Wilberforce supported those
That's
bills?
not a perfect solution, but it's at least preventing the influx, and it's chipping away at the problem.
So I know the problem is I'd say I don't want to interrupt, but then
no, it's okay.
I darn near read everything Wilberforce ever wrote. So you got a problem. Like which bill? So what actually happened historically is that Wilberforce put forward a bill to abolish the slave trade, and they voted against it. And he put forward a bill to abolish the slave trade, and they voted against it. And in order to substitute for that, to do something else, to feel like they're doing something, they put forward the Dalban Act to give more space to the slaves on the ship. And Wilberforce decried it. He wasn't for it. He actually wrote that it was wrong and bad, and that it was a stay of the slave system. And they actually, anytime any sort of even grassroots guy abolitionist said, well, at least we've taken a step in the right direction, Wilberforce and Clarkson and the actual leaders of the abolition of the slave trade movement said, no, this is a marplot. This is a substitute. We don't support this. This is what's keeping it from being abolished. So I know pro-lifers say a lot of stuff about Wilberforce, but it's actually factually not true.
Well, there's a couple different things with Wilberforce and a couple different laws. So that example that you cited of providing more space to slaves on the ship, I think that's a good example of what we've seen in what I oppose in regulating abortion is this idea that we're going to let these people clean up their act a little bit. We're going to let abortionists make abortion safer, make their clinics safer, whatever. That is, I think there's a strong case to be made for opposing that, because that is allowing it to propagate and allowing it to continue.
Improve.
Because we're making it.
Yeah. That's what we say.
It up.
That's what we say. All pro-life incremental legislation is like.
That said,
what bill were you saying?
There were other laws that not just in Europe but also in the colonies that chipped away at slavery by banning shipments, by banning the capturing of slaves in certain islands.
Okay,
correct. Yeah.
It didn't ban it altogether, but it saved a few people.
And here is what he said of those bills. He said, "Let me most seriously." This is quoting from a letter on the abolition of the slave trade, his 1807 book.
Which bill specifically was he talking about?
So
all of them here.
all of them. So let me most seriously urge on the conscientious deliberations of those who, by their fatal proposal of gradual instead of immediate abolition, dash the cup of happiness from the lips of the wretched African at the very moment when he at last appeared likely to taste it. Let me be forgiven if I speak strongly where I feel so very deeply. It is not only because the gradual abolitionists, have been in fact the only real stay of that system of wickedness and cruelty which we wish to abolish. Though that assertion is unquestionably true, it is trying beyond expression that they, the incrementalists, the gradual abolitionists, should be the real maintainers of the slave trade. And what he was talking about there was an interaction in, I think it was 1792, between him and an anti-slavery gradualist named Henry Dundas, and Wilberforce, like he came year after year after year after year, came with his abolition bill, and then Henry Dundas, the incrementalist, comes in and says, and I won't read it because it's a long quote, but my honorable friends have known that I long entertained the same opinion with them as to the abolition of the slave trade. I agree with Wilberforce. Wilberforce is great. His heart is so pure. He's great, but it should be done gradually. And then he amends it to become a gradual bill, and that bill, I believe the contents were that the children of slaves would be allowed to go free. And I think the slavery conditions would improve. There'd be higher regulations on
and eventually the slave trade would come to an end at such and such date.
Right.
And he specified a date.
And so every time he came with his abolition bill, Henry Dundas or another incrementalist would come along and say, no, I agree with you to your end goal, but let's do it gradually. Yeah. And here in Oklahoma, we've seen the exact same thing. We've seen Senator Joseph Silk and then Senator Warren Hamilton saying, hey, here's the bill to completely abolish this. And then Greg Treat, the pro tem of the Senate, the guy who we're kind of mostly attacking most ferociously because he's the main guy opposing us. He says, no, but I'll author this other pro-life bill over here. Look at this. I'm a pro-life hero. And then he gets all the awards and the acclaim from Oklahomans for Life and Tony Lawinger. And so, but because we came with the abolition bill, then they swoop in, no, here's the incremental bill instead. And that's how it plays. That's how it's played out in Texas with Jeff Leach, in Missouri with Bob Onder. That's how it worked with William Wilberforce and Henry Dundas. And that's why he excoriated the incrementalists in this way as fiercely or more fierce than we ever have. Again, he says the real maintainers of the slave trade were the anti-slavery gradualists.
So it's just a point of history that actually, if pro-life incrementalists today want to say, we are following in the footsteps of, it needs to be Henry Dundas or William Dolben. It can't be Wilberforce because Wilberforce was a hardcore anti-incrementalist.